Welcome back to another episode of Light Beer, Dark Money. I'm Sean Noble.
I'm Chris Clements.
And we've got George Khalaf here with us today.
Always good to be with you guys.
Well, I mean, is this your first time?
This is my first time.
This is your
I've
first
been
time,
a little jealous.
which makes no
I
sense.
thought you'd been here before.
No.
I've been a little jealous, but now I can cross this off my bucket list.
This absolutely makes no sense. This is his first time. Yeah. I'm so glad we had coffee a couple weeks ago and I mentioned it because there's so much going on that, like,
Oh, yeah.
we need George and his data and his insights, and what you do is very unique.
George is a data guy that actually used to work with me.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that. How do you guys, like...
He was a kid.
I mean,
still
truly a kid.
But
truly a kid.
But really a like teenager.
Yeah,
maybe
we would
you're
have met.
20, right?
We would have met on the tail end of me being 19, just turning 20.
Well, we were all kids.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, George came to work with us as a very young man and kind of jumped right into the deep end. We were doing some big stuff. Yeah. And this is my favorite story about George. So this is 2000, for the wind up to the 2012 election.
Okay.
And so we're deep involved in, the Coke stuff, doing a lot of independent expenditure, building a ground game, all that kind of stuff.
Otherwise known as dark money.
That's why we're here.
While drinking copious amounts of light beer.
Light beer, right. And so we had built a field operation, and we needed phones so that these people would make phone calls. And it was a lot. We were talking thousands and thousands of phones. So I said to George, go find us some phones. We need to buy, and I don't remember, George, if you remember, how many phones did we buy?
10,000.
We bought 10,000 phones.
Yes.
So George goes, and I presume you talked to a handful of different vendors, but ends up at T-Mobile.
Yes.
And you'd have thought he was the end all.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
He made some regional person a very famous person within T-Mobile.
Yeah.
And then he was offered all kinds of things. He got lots of offers to go to conferences and events. And
Yeah.
Did we let you do any of that?
No. The one I remember distinctly, not that I'm a hockey fan, no offense to the NHL or hockey, but there was an Avalanche game that I was vetoed. But to put into perspective, the 6 months prior to me reaching out about the 10,000 phones, I'd reached out about 3 phones. So this was this was a meteoric increase. And she at first thought I had misspoke. We did a lot of really fun things, and always I'm grateful for the time that we got to spend together and working for Sean. And one of the great things about Sean is he let even young guys like me, I'm still young, even younger than, let us do our thing as long as we were delivering. And we had a lot of fun doing it.
We did have a lot of fun. And we delivered a lot.
Oh, yes, we did. We knocked on, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands, millions of doors and made a cajillion phone calls.
I mean, we had phone banks.
Old school.
Yeah, we had phone banks where we set up near college campuses that we set up in movie theaters.
Yeah.
And we'd have hundreds of kids at a time making phone calls. And we, obviously, because Romney was the nominee, we took advantage of the fact that he was Mormon, and we organized in Utah, and we organized in Idaho, and a bunch of Mormon kids that, he was going to win Idaho and Utah, so we put them on phones and had them call swing states from east to west every night. So they'd start at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and go right to, 10 o'clock at night.
Sounds like so much fun.
And fast forward 14 years, and now we're here.
Here we're here.
Press a button, text.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Please support our candidate.
So we are
got like 90 today, all by itself.
Yeah.
I have you guys to
Oh
thank.
my gosh, got a lot of texts.
Oh my goodness.
So we are day 2 of the shutdown.
Well, yeah, I know the Schumer shutdown.
and,
Make no mistake.
It was funny because I was
Have you seen the meme?
which one?
The one with Hakeem Jeffries with a sombrero.
Yeah.
You know why it's so funny? I mean, there's sombrero aside and all that. What's so funny is because what is coming out of Schumer's mouth is absolutely correct. They've lost all these voters. They're in deep, deep trouble as a party.
Yeah.
And look, the data, I know there's some data out there that shows, this was all pre the actual shutdown. This was when it was conjecture. Republicans would be more to blame, but history doesn't show that. I mean, the last true shutdown that we had was during the Obama administration, and it did not. It was way more negative for Democrats, and that's typically what happens because the Republicans now are able to put up votes, and they keep declining to the point where you have a handful of Democratic and the one independent senator who caucuses with the Democrats voting to open, but they can't get enough for closure.
No, they sent that olive branch out last night.
Yeah.
Failed again.
Why? Because they needed to blow kisses to the progressive left and finally stick it to the Republicans. That's really why we have a shutdown.
And it's really bizarre because they are doing this. One of the things, and they keep denying it. Jeffries was on with Jake Tapper, and Jake Tapper was talking about, your bill that you want, the language you have is to provide health care for illegal immigrants and undocumented workers and people here on asylum.
Yeah, because that was what was being done before the big beautiful bill.
Yeah,
which nobody knew about.
Right,
until it was exposed.
He's like, that's a lie, and Jake Tapper's like, well, the language is right here.
Yeah,
and people, and then people are like, oh, I can't believe that these people are lying about this, and it's like, then they show then they show during the 2020 election in the Democrat primary, when you had all the Democratic candidates up there saying, does your health care reform include health care for illegal aliens? And every hand went up.
Yeah, of course.
So that is the Democrat position.
Of course it is. And they're trying to run away from it. But also, I don't believe they believe that Trump was going to be true to his word. And it's being reported by the Daily Wire this morning that Trump is meeting to axe Democratic agencies. Like, this weekend is going to be very interesting for the Democrats.
Yeah.
Because they and the quote is, I can't believe the radical left Democrats gave me this unprecedented opportunity.
Right.
It's like, I've posted in different platforms, the hashtag FAFO election rolls on. And it's like, he says what he's going to do, and he does what he says.
Yeah.
And they just don't believe it.
Well, I think this is the defining kind of a statement or a couple sentences about the last 8 years, or really the time since he came down the golden escalators, which is that he finally showed up on the scene and was one of the few politicians, was the only at the beginning, and now is one of the few politicians that actually, digs in. I mean, frankly, I think why a lot of people are frustrated with DC, not that getting things done is obviously bad, we need to get things done, but that when you say one thing and then you do another, people get sick and tired of it. Republicans were doing it almost more than Democrats were, and he finally did it. Now, you may not like everything that he does, but you can't see objectively in the first, number of months of the administration, the second one, and even the first 4 years of the administration. Did he do something that he didn't say he was going to do? No. And he really didn't leave much out. He kind of did it all. And it's new, though. It's new in American politics. Let's be candid.
Yeah.
Who's the last person that did that?
Yeah, most politicians don't ever deliver.
And especially at the national level. It's one thing to do that if you're mayor or you're at the legislature. But when you're the chief executive of the entire nation and then your entire administration rows in that same direction, that is unprecedented. It's crazy to say.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
it's hilarious.
Russ Vogt is doing his thing.
Go Russ, go.
Yeah.
And he was prepared for this, right? There's a lot of reports that says, I feel like they had binders coming out of the first administration in case of X, in case of Y. Right. He's picking out as in case of Z, and he has been preparing for this. I mean, he's a smart guy.
Not only preparing, but even in our discussions with him on this show, relishing this opportunity. Because, and this is the big frustration, I think, from the electorate is when we have these shutdowns and people, the government says, well, non-essential personnel will be furloughed. Well, if they're non-essential personnel, what the heck are they doing there in the first place?
Right.
So should they come back? Maybe not. And so that's the game they're going to play now.
Yeah. Well, apparently Carolyn Levitt is saying that the layoffs could be in the thousands. So, and I'm guessing it's probably going to be even higher than that.
Oh, I'm
the
sure.
longer it goes, the more pressure that the Republican side will have to execute on that because.
Right. So Russ Vogt announced on Tuesday that nearly $8 billion in green new scam funding spent on the left's climate agenda was being canceled.
Yeah.
So he's just rolling forward.
Right.
Yeah. Go Russ, go.
Yeah. There's plenty of fodder to work off. I mean, that's the other thing. If there was not all of this waste, there would not be much to do. Can you imagine that? But there's, of course, going to be tons to do because of the 4 years under the Biden administration, they were just handing out goodies to anybody and everything that was progressive. Every progressive ideology and progressive NGO or progressive international organization was just getting goodies.
Right.
In the billions, not millions, billions.
In billions, and those NGOs, I mean, we've now learned through, the last several months that many of those NGOs were just feeding mechanisms back to those legislators.
Yeah.
They're paying themselves through their own nonprofits.
Yeah.
Right. Convenient if you can pull that off.
Well, that's corrupt if you can get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, George, one of the things we were going to talk about, given that we're here in Arizona, we've got a new entrant into the governor's race. Congressman Schweikert has announced that he's running for governor. Did we talk about this the last episode?
We talked about it at the tail end, and we discussed the fact that we like David. He's been on our show more than anybody.
Yeah, he might be our most.
Yeah, and philosophically, we're very much aligned with David. Why he's doing this, other than maybe for some personal reasons, we just are having a hard time understanding. And the Arizona Republic put it plainly this morning: what is his path to victory?
Yeah.
Given the polling and the data that we're seeing, and since politics is math, that's what David has taught us over the last 2 decades. Politics is math. So what's the math, George? Tell us what the math is.
Is there a path?
That's the thing. It's like, what is the math? I been involved in politics for about as long as Congressman Schweikert has been in Congress, right? So 2010 was my first full year where I was doing work in Arizona. So I've learned very early career not to ever discredit his abilities and, frankly, his team's abilities. They've won some really, really difficult races.
Sure.
Right? Not to go relitigate 2010 and 2012. They've won some really difficult primaries and difficult generals. But I'm not seeing. I think even Path is being general or is being generous. Like, what is the trail to what victory could look like? Because, look, we live in a day and an age where the Trump endorsement means something, not just because President Trump endorses you, but because of what that signals to the widest contingency, the majority of the Republican vote. We know the party has become exceedingly more conservative, as the Democratic Party has been exceedingly more progressive. And while, yes, and I saw the line in the Stacey Barchenger article in the Republic that said that he was the congressman was going to talk about his conservative record, how do you do that in a race where the two other individuals have been endorsed by the president, and they, at least from Congressman Biggs' perspective, has taken that more conservative mantle, and Congressman Schweikert is more of an in-the-weeds guy, and it's different to be in the weeds today than it is to be in the weeds in 2012. Because the math comes down to this, is that can you win enough of the Republican vote, which is a very conservative electorate in the primary? And before we ever talk about the general, and I love my friends that say, well, this person can't win the general. Well, this is the first step. You can't skip. There's no pass go here. You have to win the primary to win the general. Is there enough of a path there? And I think the answer is no. I'm not seeing any data that leads me to believe that. And I'm also not seeing any data that he is likelier to win a general election than anyone else is, even if he's won tough generals, because we're also more divided than we've ever been. The district or the state, we're not talking about swinging 25% of the vote like we did back in the day. We're talking there's 10% that is swingable, and the remaining 90 is kind of set. I'm being a little exaggerative, but it's around that, plus or minus 10 to 15. That's really the movement. And look, and there's a lot that's going to be at play in Arizona, but there's one thing that has been below the radar that I think, we can go down this rabbit trail, which is every month and every quarter that goes on, the registration numbers are getting progressively worse for Democrats. They're getting worse for, I would say, moderate Republicans, if I can use that phrase, and they're getting better for this new kind of controlling class in the Republican Party, because the Republican registration is growing big time.
Yeah.
The Democratic registration is not growing, and where it's growing on the Republican side is in rural Arizona, it's in North Scottsdale, it's in very red districts. It's not growing in the core. Obviously, as we know, there's not many places to move into in the core. So, what do you do with that? Math, politics is math. What do you do with that?
It's a great question.
I don't know. And you have the other factor too that unfortunately has happened over the last several weeks, and that's the turning point factor. And I think that's a juggernaut that's behind Andy that is different now because of what's happened the last several weeks. And to your point, what lane does David have? A sliver of a lane.
Yeah.
and barely an ability to make mistakes within that lane. I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, any of the candidates don't have a lot of room for error. I think in the primary, the person who's in the pole position, to use that phrase, is Congressman Biggs, not just because the polling, no pun intended, says so, but because of his makeup and his background. But there is very little room for error because, again, voters are looking for something specific. And this is something I speak all the time when I'm out and about talking to groups. Voters are looking for conviction. They're looking for a candidate to be articulate and a candidate that has a record, right? So a record is actually not necessarily bad, but your track record has to be consistent with what's in the minds of voters. And what does it mean to fight for them, right? The word fight is a derogatory term in some circles. I don't think it is, because fighting for what you believe in is, to me, the highest honor that a man or a person can do. So who has fought for these principles more, and what can they prove that? Right? I mean, and that's going to be the big question: is what's the narrative that you're giving to voters in terms of the fight? And like, look, CD1, Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, North Phoenix, that's an important, Biltmore, Arcadia, it's an important area for the general and for the primary. I'm not going to take anything away, but it's only still, 18% of the total vote? I mean, it's not.
And not only that, but the poll that was released by, I think it was Club for Growth that commissioned it, that came out a few days ago. It showed Schweikert in third with 11%. If you dig into the crosstabs, he doesn't even win his congressional district. So if he can't win his congressional district, then I don't see how there's possibly a path. To me, it just doesn't look like it's possible.
Well, his congressional district was the best congressional district for Karen Taylor Robeson when she ran against Carrie Lake in the last governor's race. So that also, then the question of who does it affect more, his entry? I think the answer is it has to affect Karen Taylor Robeson, because that was her best congressional district. And again, what are the areas in this congressional district that are growing? It's not Arcadia and Biltmore. There's nowhere to go, as anyone who's in the valley knows. The area of growth is the far North Valley and North Scottsdale. Who's moving to those places? It's people that are fed up with what's happening with inside, as I like to joke, the Loop 101, and they keep going further and farther and farther, like with what's happening in the Southeast Valley in Santan. It only gets more conservative.
Right.
And so
the further out you get, the more conservative. Look at like you said, Santan, Queen Creek,
Anthem,
County,
Cave Creek, all of that. I mean, in both directions, and even in the far west. So, look, unless there's some grand master thing we're not seeing, this is the one asterisk I would give. It's a long road between today and the end of July. We don't know what happens. I mean, we woke up on September 9th, September 10th thinking one thing, and we went to bed thinking another thing. And we've done that multiple times in our history as a state and as a nation. And so
that's very true.
We don't know what other factors come into this race. But we also have an empirical set of data to look at since 2016. And, the profile of the candidates has to make sense to the empirical data points. And it's not largely making sense for a couple, and it makes more sense for one. I mean, that to me is my reading and how I've tried to analyze races, frankly, since 2018.
Well, talk to us about how the state has changed, the voter registration, turnout models, that kind of thing, when it comes to, regardless of who wins the primary, you've got a Democratic governor, and you've got a narrow majority in the House and Senate for Republicans. When you look at the data, how does the data impact your thinking in the context of the quote-unquote conventional wisdom that the first midterm of a incumbent president is going to work against him? In this case, supposedly it works against Republicans, that Trump is in the White House. Is that conventional wisdom on track, or do you see things here in Arizona that make you think otherwise?
So the way that I try to approach data, I think, to me, a mixed political analysis is a mixture of the raw numbers, but you also have to have an understanding of what's happening on the ground. I think that was, that's a la, Clinton's presidential race in 2016. All the numbers said all these things, but they didn't have zero awareness of what's happening on the ground. Right. So as someone who's been a proud Arizonan for the majority of my life since, I was a baby, since I was 4 or 5, I like to combine what does the data say and what does the feeling on the ground say when you go out and about. And in general, I've been fighting back against this narrative, which is that Arizona is going the way of Colorado. Colorado, in a very short snippet for those that are not aware, went from being a swing / somewhat reliable of a Republican state, and really over the course of under a decade, went to being a reliably blue state, period, hard stop. There's no question about it. Right. And so there's a lot of talk that says Arizona is going that way or going the way of Virginia. Well, Well, the problem is that's not what's happened materially. And I'd been pushing back even before this data was really playing out because of my gut instinct of being out and about and talking to people. We are cowboys out here. Whether you're a progressive or you're a conservative, the cowboy mentality does not fit the mold neatly.
Right.
I'm proud to say that as a I don't look like and dress like a cowboy, but you know what I mean. I have the cowboy mentality.
That fits in with what we've said on the show before. That we're not necessarily a liberal state or conservative state. We're a contrarian state.
Exactly.
And there's a streak of independence that runs right through the middle of the state.
That started with and why obviously
Yes.
Barry Goldwater had the prominence that he had in Arizona, and so now the numbers have caught up to that sort of anecdotal feeling, which is that we are at the highest percentage of Republican growth that we've had in the state, and we are at the greatest advantage over Democrats that we've had in modern history, the last 2 to 3 decades, and it only has grown
in history.
It has not slowed down. I mean,
Right.
the high water mark of 2014, 2012, and the years before, coming off of the Obama first election in 2008, typically what happens after a presidential is the party that won regresses.
Yes.
Okay, that's what happened in 2020 because this all really started numerically then,
Right.
and there was a tremendous regression with like a slide of Democrats as a percentage of the total vote, and Republicans increased, or at worst case did not slide. That has not happened since the election. The Republican numbers keep growing, the Democratic numbers keep shrinking, and the independent numbers are kind of trending. But right now, Republicans are we're likely going to enter the 2026 general election. Could be with a double-digit registration advantage, and then couple that with the fact that
Why is that? What in your analysis? Why is that? Because what you're saying is unbelievable to a lot of people who've been following politics for a long time.
So I do think it is people switching, but I don't think that we're seeing enough in the data to show that it's all people switching. I think that we, like Texas has become for some parts of the country and Florida, we've become a safe haven for those that are leaving other states. Yep. And they're leaving California or Oregon or Washington or really anywhere west of the Mississippi. And they're like, or Chicago, we have a lot of Chicagoites in Arizona. They're saying, I want to leave my blue state and I want to come to a hospitable place. And then the fear, right? You've heard this, how many times if you all heard this? Oh my gosh, these people moving in from these blue states are going to make Arizona blue. Right. And materially, I was in Prescott a couple of weeks back. I said, I'm sorry, like Yavapai County, the more Californians and Chicagoans and Canadians that, I guess not Canadians, they can't vote, that come into, the redder that you get. Yeah. The more that we get in Arizona, the redder that we get. So people that are moving
that
in,
is a real phenomenon. So the phenomenon of Californians, et cetera, moving in here, it's specifically conservative-minded people who are fleeing, and those states become more impoverished by their leftist liberalism.
Maybe I'm not hanging out with the folks that are coming from San Francisco here to make us as blue as San Francisco and to repeat the wonderfulness that San Francisco has yielded. The people that I talk to,
or Portland for that matter.
People I talk to are, I'm coming here, George, because I'm fed up. Chicago, when it was out of control. Even Orange County, they're saying, is out of control. San Francisco is for sure out of control. I cannot live there. And I'm not saying I run into them at political events. I run into them at dinner. I run into them doing all kinds of random activities. People are voluntarily, when they learn what I do, someone is always from somewhere else in Arizona. Very rarely are you originally from Arizona. You've been here for 30 years. And they all fled somewhere else. And so the data is bearing that out. And they're voting with their feet. We hear that phrase often. And Arizona is becoming more Republican. And then the phenomenon of the other sort of the final component of this is, it is very clear that voters that are Hispanic, that are non-white, are trending towards the Republican cause. We had been seeing that in Florida and in Texas for years. Arizona is now catching up. Donald Trump continues to do better in South Phoenix. It just is objectively there. If anyone's familiar with the valley, the south of Grand, that triangle, north of the I-10, east of the 101, south of Grand, that's become, I'm not saying it's Republican, it's becoming more so. President Trump does better. In rural Yuma County, County was a majority Democrat registration. Now it is a majority Republican and is growing. So we get new movers, we get some people switching, and there's a very clear trajectory on the Hispanic vote. And even though we have a large suburban core, right? What caused Denver to go that way is Denver has something like 6 or 7 counties. They have much smaller counties in Denver, in the Colorado area, that are majority white and college educated. Do you know how many we have in Arizona? 0.
Yeah.
Maricopa County is not majority white college educated, not even close.
Right.
People forget that. Virginia has a number.
Yeah.
White college educated voters are going left.
Yeah.
But we don't actually have enough of them as it relates to our Hispanic vote and the growth in rural Arizona, which is still 25 to 30% of our vote. So we have 0 counties that are majority white college educated, which is why we're likely not ever going to see that trend. Yeah. At least not with what we're seeing materially play out. The data does not back that theory.
And I think it's important for people to understand that from a historic standpoint, this is the high point in Arizona. And when I tell people what I'm about to say, they kind of are baffled. Barry Goldwater won his first race in 1952. Republicans were outnumbered 4-1, or maybe 5-1
in this state. Absolutely,
in the state. It was a Democratic state, and
Completely.
he beat the sitting, Senate Majority Leader, Ernest McFarland, and then went on to run. Except for a 64 presidential campaign, he ran in every 6 years, and his last election was 1980. In 1980, when Ronald Reagan won Arizona for president, we were still a Democratic state. We had a Democrat majority.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 1986 that Republicans. So Reagan won both times. Won Arizona twice as a Democratic state. It wasn't until 1986 when McCain ran for Senate the first time that we flipped, just barely, from Democrat to Republican. And we've just grown since then. But it wasn't until 1986 that we became a Republican state.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Goes back against the contrarian. And again, most people don't know the founding of our state was a very progressive populist. That's why we have very robust voter initiatives and things that most states don't have. People forget that about Arizona. But that's, again, 100% happening, even though we have tons of growth in Maricopa County, right, as a longtime proud resident of Maricopa County. But we also are seeing tremendous growth outside of Maricopa County. Yuma, Yavapai, so north and south, and those places, again, are becoming Pinal County. Pinal County was a Democratic county up until 2012 in terms of who they elected
for a long time
to the legislature and what's their voter registration.
Completely.
Now it's like a R+20.
Yeah.
Again, all of these things together means that the Chicken Littles, as I lovingly call them.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself. There's one county that you're missing, that you're leaving out, that's actually shrinking.
Pima County.
Yes. Sorry, I can't help myself.
I love our Southern Arizona friends, and I know that there's so much anguish amongst Republicans in Pima County. And yes, Pima County, the shining, the positive there is that the Democrats are not gaining, they're regressing. They're going backwards. Republicans are gaining slightly, but we've got a long road to go.
We need to get some great candidates down there to.
It's a highway, not a road. Yeah, we need miles and miles to go.
Yeah, once you pass that Gila River, it gets red and then it gets really blue once you hit Picacho.
Yeah.
And it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, there's no. These areas that you've talked about had an influx of people coming here for a better life, and Pima County has regressed. They've actually seen declines in growth over the last 10, 15 years, and so that's been a major factor.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, people have left and come here or gone elsewhere.
Yeah, out of frustration for what's happening, and from an electoral political
for the same reasons.
Business perspective, it's not hospitable. Coconino is also not growing tremendously. Flagstaff is one of the original folks that passed the minimum wage laws, and business is really concerned. And so it's clear where, who's growing and why we are growing. Arizona, we've always been proud. This also gets into the governor's race we talked about. We went from being first in job growth to being in best case middling of the pack to being 48th, 49th that I saw. Those all have an effect on the long-term trajectory of a state. And we've been proudly going in a direction. Growing and becoming more red and wearing our values on our sleeves. But we need real leadership to continue that. That doesn't just happen by accident, as we all know. It's not sheer dumb luck.
Right.
It's leadership that's required to get you there. And so who are the leaders of tomorrow? That's the question I always ask, and I know we're all interested in. Who are the leaders of 2035 and 2040 in Arizona? We have to be thinking in that long term.
Yeah. So how do you look at the legislative makeup? We've got a majority in the House and the Senate, and as we're looking into next year, where hopefully we'll have a Republican governor, we certainly would want to have a Republican legislature.
Yes.
How does that look?
So I have consistently been bullish on the legislative front. I think we have an opportunity to pick up another seat in the House, maybe two. In worst case, hold. I think we have an opportunity. The Senate's a little bit more precarious for redistricting. To nerd out for a moment. As folks know, in 2030, we're going to have to redistrict. And while it feels like it's a ways away, it's around the corner.
Yeah.
That's what makes who the next governor is very important, because right now our districts are disjointed. What I mean by that is District 3, where my wife and I live, is massive compared to just the neighboring district, because there's been so much growth. And so now there's a whole bunch of Republicans packed in District 3 that could be distributed other places that make sense to. because there's disproportionate growth in Republican areas. And so while that's not a legal factor, that is a factor that they look at in redistricting. So who the governor is matters for how redistricting goes. Again, we can get into that later because it's a ways away. But in this coming election, I think that there's an opportunity to hold some of the gains. So District 4, which is the Scottsdale, Paradise Valley area, in District 13, which is Chandler, those are places that we gained. But we lost a seat in Pima, right? In District 17, which is like the donut around the urban core there. I don't think it's unreasonable to get that seat back. District 2, we don't have one of the House seats. That's like the Moon Valley, Deer Valley, North Phoenix area. It's not unreasonable to get that seat back. So in the House, there's a couple of opportunities for growth, 2 seats in particular. In the Senate, we're reaching a little bit. West Mesa, District 9, Mesa, small parts of Tempe is their best opportunity. But in general, I think Republicans are in the driver's seat, even if the national environment is the way that it is, because materially speaking, the types of voters that are in these areas and the growth that we're seeing is better for Republicans than it is for Democrats. And unless there's a Democrat that can show me that they're going to get up one day and decide to buck the trend of their broader party, which is to become more progressive, and then actually be able to win, then I'll believe it when I see it. But are we seeing them win primaries? We're not. We're seeing the most progressive option win primaries. Right. So we spend a lot of time sort of talking about how the more conservative person wins in the primary and can they win the general. We're not spending nearly enough time talking about how they're electing the most progressive person possible into a swing district, and they're losing for that. Look what happened to District 4. They lost one of their seats, and they lost a seat in District 13 for a reason. It's not that Chandler has materially changed that much in 2 years or Scottsdale, but they have changed. So those areas are changing enough to the right, and who the Democrats are putting up is changing tremendously. There's no room, even something as basic as school choice, which the latest numbers, I care a lot about school choice, 80% of Democratic voters support. And name me a single elected in the state of Arizona that supports school choice.
Not one.
Not one that's elected anymore. One. There's a couple that are no longer elected.
And you have a governor who's tried to eviscerate it, but
every year,
unsuccessfully,
until she's given up because she realizes that, whether she realizes it or she realizes that it's going to hurt her chances of reelection. So that's just one example.
I think the latter. She can read the numbers too, right?
80%
at some point,
support.
She's got to fight against her own caucus.
Among Democrats, 80%.
Among Democrats. And you know who the leading voice is? No surprise, Hispanic Democrats. They're the leading voice because they want opportunity. Why does a family like mine, I'm an immigrant family, why do immigrant families come to the United States? For opportunity. Education is one of the biggest drivers of opportunity in the United States of America and around the world. Why would they not want their kids to have all the opportunities available to them?
Best options.
But there's a party that doesn't want that because they're controlling groups, the teachers unions and organizations that are like nonprofits that align with them say no. What we need is we want control. We don't want what's best for you. And they keep nominating candidates that
espouse those values perfectly.
Yeah. So imagine, are you going to be able to win in Scottsdale long term thinking like that? Are you going to be able to win in Chandler long term? I don't think so. I don't think that's what those voters want.
Yeah. That's so true.
Well, they're doubling down, like we've said before, on the 20% issues, in terms of social engineering.
Yeah. I mean, suburban women, right? This is another sort of data point. Suburban women are the most tense group politically, I should say, in the sense of what party is going to win them. What do those voters care about? We've seen it in quantitative polling, so in polling that's like actual survey research, and we've seen it in focus groups. They want to feel safe and secure as it pertains to sort of public safety, actually, as it pertains to education, and as it pertains to their sort of economic situation. They want to feel secure in their ability to raise a family.
Yeah.
And so what party is lending itself more to safety and security? And what party is not? So if you're in Scottsdale and you see what's happening long term, who are you going to go? What's the thesis? You're like, okay, is the Democratic Party causing me to feel more safe and have my kids have more options, or is the Republican Party causing that? Even if I don't love everything that the leader of the Republican Party is doing or saying on a given day, materially, what party is making my life better or easier, and what party is making it worse or harder? I think the answer is clear. That's why President Trump won Arizona. And that's why we won, bigly in Scottsdale and other suburban areas, because the answer was clear. Is my life better today than it was 4 years ago? The answer is no. My life was objectively worse.
Yeah.
And so suburban voters are going to vote that way. Well, so even in that swing audience.
And speaking of the swing audience and suburban women, I think one of the things that happened last cycle was something that basically took away a weapon for the Democrat candidates, which was the abortion issue. Now, we worked against the ballot initiative, but there was a ballot initiative that enshrined abortion as a right in the Constitution, thereby taking it completely off the table for electoral politics at the state level. And so running for governor, running for state legislature, abortion is no longer an issue. And I think that's part of why Katie Hobbs was able to win when she did over Lake.
That's a
on the
great
abortion
point.
issue. But then last year, we saw some gains in districts that the Democrats thought for sure they were going to get because they spent millions talking about abortion
And not about everything else.
and not about everything else. And smart women voters were like, well, wait a minute. We've got this ballot initiative. That'll protect my abortion rights so I can vote my pocketbook on the legislative stuff. And so the question is, what will the Democrats message on now that abortion is off the table?
I think the only thing they've been talking about, which is that Republicans or Donald Trump or anyone who espouses those beliefs are evil, right? We're
all Nazis.
I mean, I'm not like Sean. What else do they have? What else are we materially seeing in Arizona? I guess they can say, I don't know. We're busting the budget. I mean, what voter is going to understand the intricacies of our 17-point-some billion dollar budget, and it's not being busted. Newsflash. But where are they going to go? What are the easy talking points? Which is to say that we're evil, that we as in Republicans, or that anyone who follows Donald Trump, or as Christians, or whatever you want to say. But is that really a winning issue, especially now with what we're seeing the last 3 weeks, with what we've been seeing the last number of years, and materially, these voters, to your point, do they care more about some perceived, are they willing to be sold this narrative that this group of people are just objectively evil, which we hang out with each other all the time, so they clearly can understand that, like, in general, no, we're not. Or are they going to believe that this one party is driving us sort of off of an economic cliff or a cultural cliff? I mean, the cultural issues, you talked about the 20% doubling down. I almost think that they're getting into the 5-10% range of they're doubling down, and there's like literally no end in sight.
Yeah.
And while people are like,
no, it's accelerating, and that's I didn't want to go there, but it seems like it's accelerating.
Yeah.
And that they're willing to defend even the most outrageous things.
Yes. And again, I believe those voters in the suburbs are saying, look, I don't necessarily want to talk about who uses what bathroom. Okay. But I also definitely don't like what I'm hearing. I mean, that's the bottom line. They're like, I don't want to talk about this more, but you cannot convince me that it's normal for all the videos that are coming out of this individual being with my daughter in a bathroom. You can't convince me of that.
Right.
But there's a party that's deciding that they want to, or an academic thought or an ideological thought. Yeah. They're not going to be convinced of that. But they don't want to talk about it necessarily. They want to talk about other things.
Yeah.
But it's almost like
it keeps getting shoved in my face.
By who?
And
by the progressive left.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's
and I'm being told I need to accept it.
Yeah.
That I need to affirm it, and I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I don't like
anymore.
it. It makes
I
me
don't like it.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And when it comes to my daughters, here we go.
Yeah. People are uncomfortable with it. They don't like to talk about it, and the fact that this does get shoved in their face on a regular basis, I think, is going to backfire.
Yeah. And that is the genius. No matter what you think of President Trump, that is the genius of how he views the world and how he does his PR. How he communicates to the average person, that's his genius. He understands and puts a finger on the pulse of where people are going. I don't know that he caused us to go in a way. I think he had a finger on the pulse of where we were going after 8 years of Barack Obama, and where the Democratic Party started in 2008 to where the Democratic Party ended in 2016.
Yes.
And he, with a very, very problematic candidate in opposition to him in Hillary Clinton, and he put that finger on the pulse. And then we had 4 years.
She keeps proving it.
And we had 4 years of even worse. I mean, my gosh, life from 2020 to 2024 was almost unrecognizable in that 4-year stretch.
Oh, it's
right.
They blew the lid off of it, and then we all woke up and we won the election in something that was not even dramatic, by the way. There's no hanging chads. There was no overnight. We all went to bed knowing what was going to happen. It was really different than 16. Popular vote victory. No matter how much you try to diminish, it wasn't that large. Well, it was the first time a Republicans won the popular vote in a long time. In a
Since
couple of decades.
2004.
Yeah, it's a long time, right? What does that mean? Does that mean that all of a sudden this 52% of the population is just horrible and Nazi? I mean, I hate even using that word, but like they're kind of they keep going there, and
they do keep going there.
It's not just offensive. It is wild. It's wild because it doesn't make any sense, and you have so many Democratic consultants that are telling them stop it. But they're not the prevailing voice.
No.
James Carville is not the prevailing voice in the Democratic Party today. I mean, heck, even Axelrod isn't anymore.
Right.
It's the consultants for AOC and others that they own the narrative today in the Democratic
just
Party.
as Democrats.
Yeah.
They've taken over the
party. They're the ones who are controlling Schumer. That's why we have a shutdown.
Yeah. Mamdani, because he's saying, oh my gosh, look at what's happening with Mamdani in New York, and I'm in New York. Like, that's who's in control of the Democratic Party, or Portland, or wherever.
Yeah.
So
it's unbelievable.
So what you're saying? So you're saying there's a chance?
I am. The only reason that there wouldn't be a chance is if all of a sudden we all woke up and tomorrow put our heads in the sand and didn't emerge until after November. It is very clear what the path is. It's not rocket science. The country is heading in a way, and as long as we nominate good men and women,
I was just going to say that
of
candidates
conviction,
matter.
Of conviction, of people that can speak well but speak truth. We saw that in the last 3 weeks. It's just been on overdrive. We've been seeing that for months and years. I get really worked up about this. People want good candidates that are going to stand strong, and they're not shouting it. We're shouting it insofar as that we're being bold with what we believe, but we are doing it in the right way to win people over. And we have a saying in Arabic that is, nothing is true but the truth. What we mean by that is, in the long term, the truth is the only thing that's going to be true. Even if in the short term, a lie can prevail. And we're seeing that play out in America and in Arizona. If we keep going down this path, these values win because they are eternal truths. And we're not deciding on Tuesday that we believe this thing, and on Friday we believe something else.
Right.
Yeah, we're not putting our finger up to the wind and wondering what we're going to believe the next day.
We wake up every day knowing what we believe because they come from a singular source. We don't decide what we believe based on some poll that we see or what makes us feel good on any given day.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. We have a belief. We have a worldview. We have a biblical worldview, and then we march on. And a lot more people are looking at that, even if they're not, and saying, what does that mean? Why are these people believing what they're believing? Why are they speaking to me in this kind way, even if they're telling me that I'm wrong? People are starting to take notice, as we have seen, especially again in the last 3 weeks.
But I mean, I'm glad we're going there. That is what is driving the left nuts.
Yes.
Because those are values they do not share, and they look at as a threat to everything that they've built over the last 50 years.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it
completely.
It raises in the progressive ideology, the individual is the eternal being. And in the biblical worldview, the God and his grace and love is the ultimate being, and the individual is second to God.
It's the ultimate thing we need to be pursuing in our life.
Yeah, yeah.
Not politics, not fame, not fortune,
not the thing that gets me anxious on Tuesday night.
But having that centered, vertical arrangement.
Yes, right. Not what some TikTok person says for me to get worked up about. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so to your point, we've seen, just the reaction to the Charlie Kirk memorial on the left was really unbelievable. But what we've said on the show many times is what's interesting about it is that it keeps showing us who they are.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I don't get worked up about the reaction, whereas some other people do. They get very angry. It's like, don't get worked up. No. This is actually a good thing.
Yeah. And they should be scared.
Because they're scared, they're frightened, and when people are scared, frightened, they lash out, and out of anger and fear and frustration, just continue to let them show the world who they are.
Yeah, and they should be nervous. I was there, and what's happening is real, and it's only grown since then, and it has no signs of slowing down. He has propelled something that is much bigger than him or what he could have imagined, much bigger than even Turning Point USA, and that they could have imagined, and it's no signs of slowing down. And absolutely, when you espouse progressive ideology, you should be terrified of what's happening.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
You're on the wrong side of history. On the wrong side of God.
Love it.
George, how can people follow you, read your stuff? Otherwise, be in touch.
You can find me online, George_Khalaf on X. But if you look up George Khalaf, Khalaf, I am going to be speaking out more publicly about these things. I feel very convicted about this, about what my faith means in respect to my political worldview, my political thought, what it means to the family, how to speak to young men, right? So these things are really moving at my heart, and so I am going to be speaking out more. You can find me online at George Khalaf, and stay tuned for some exciting announcements that we have in the next handful of weeks about how I'm going to be speaking out more publicly.
Awesome.
Fantastic. That's great. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm so sorry that we haven't had you on earlier.
No, this is great.
Probably my fault.
Yeah,
even though he worked for you. I mean, that's how we met.
Oh, Chris's fault. All right, George. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening. God bless.